Hi everyone, my name is Elizabeth, and today I'm presenting on muscle contraction, specifically the sliding filament theory for Anatomy 1 or C-Bio 2200. So, first and foremost, we're going to talk about contraction overview and specifically what a muscle contraction really is. So I encourage you to pause this video and think to yourself what a muscle contraction could be. So a muscle contraction is when a muscle cell receives an electrical impulse or an action potential, or an AP, from a neuron, and this causes the muscle fibers to develop tension and shorten. So a little bit of clarification, the tension, we'll talk about tension in the sense that it's force produced in muscle cells, or a way I like to think of it, is that it's a buildup of energy, whether that energy is kind of used or stored into kinetic energy. So whether it's shortening and you're kind of flexing your arm, or if it's more isometric, like you're still engaging your arm, your muscles or whatever, but they're not actually moving. And then muscle contractions also allow for movement and strength throughout the body, and this is essential for survival. Otherwise we would not be able to move or do the things that we're able to do on a daily basis. And then on a little bit of a broader note, it's essential for survival because your heart is made of muscle tissue, and the muscle cells have to contract in order for your heart to pump. And if your heart is not able to pump, then we would not be able to live. And so muscle contractions, while we don't truly and fully understand them, the main idea is the sliding filament theory, which is behind how a muscle contraction is, or how a muscle contraction works, what it is, and all the nitty-gritty. So the sliding filament theory has 4 parts to it. The first one being, or 4 stages really. The first stage is the recovery stroke. The second one is the cross bridge formation. The third step is the power stroke, and then the fourth is the myosin releases the actin. So this image off here to the right is really, really important. That's a brief overview of the sliding filament theory. I recommend that you take screenshots of this, add this to your notes, draw it out, whatever it may be, but I would recommend to have this pretty close to you on hand to keep referring to, because I use this a lot when I was studying for this class, and it really helped me understand the whole process. Okay, so step 1 is a recovery stroke, and this is characterized by the myosin heads being in their extended position, which is their high energy position. So as you can tell right here, here are some myosin heads. So even though these seem flexed, they're not. This is their extended version. The flexed version is kind of like a curlicue, which we'll see on some later slides. But as you can tell, here's some myosin. These yellow balls are actin, and then I'll go into that a little bit in some later slides. But the ATP has been hydrolyzed into ADP and phosphate. So that ATP has given all of its energy to those myosin heads, which is why they're in the extended position. And another way you can think about it is that the energy from the ATP has been used to kind of like cock the myosin heads into a higher energy state. Another way I like to think about it is kind of like a slingshot. When you're getting the slingshot ready, you're pulling back, and when you're pulling back, you're gearing it up. It's in a high energy position. And as soon as you let go of that slingshot, all that energy is being transferred into another source. So yeah, and then a note is that the myosin head positioning, remember, extended is high energy, flexed is low. So this was pretty counterintuitive for me when I was taking this course, so I decided to make a graphic, make it a little bit easier to remember. But yeah, the myosin heads are extended here, and that means high energy. The way I would remember this is if you think about flexing your arm. So when your arm is out straight, it seems low energy, but it's not, because at this point you're gearing up to flex your arm. So you have a whole bunch of energy kind of stored in your arm, and then when you completely flex your arm, now that it's in this flex position, there's no more energy left. I don't really have to expend any more energy. It's in this flex position, but that energy has been used and released. Therefore, it is low energy when it's flexed. Another way you can think about this is, if you're holding out your dog or something, it takes a lot more energy to hold your dog with your arms out straight than if you had your arms flexed and you're holding your dog closer to your chest. That takes a lot less effort if it's closer to your chest versus if your arms are out straight. Just another silly way to think about that. Okay, so for step 2, we have the cross-bridge formation. So this is where the myosin and the actin bind together, and the myosin-actin complex is formed. This is also known as the cross-bridge. Keep in mind that they have to be physically connected. So in this state here, the calcium has bound to the troponin, which is these little gray dots here, which has moved the tropomyosin out of the way, which are these long string-like structures. So now the actin active sites are exposed, which is kind of these divots in the actin. So then the myosin is able to bind to that. And keep in mind, this is still, so it's still in its high energy state here. So just keeping that all in mind, it is physically connected. So for step 3, this is the power stroke, and this is where ADP and phosphate are released from myosin. So myosin at this point is returning to its low energy state, which is really important because as the myosin goes from its low energy state, it drags the actin filament with it, and this in total shortens the muscle fiber. So shortens the muscle fiber, shortens those sarcomeres, brings the Z-discs in closer, and this happens all throughout the entire sarcomere because you have so many myofilaments. And this in general just causes the muscle contraction. So the 4th and final step is that myosin releases the actin. So this is triggered by a new ATP being added to the myosin. So now this myosin is in its low energy state here. And the myosin is gearing up for its recovery stroke, and this entire process repeats. So here's that big graphic that I was telling you guys about. Maybe at this point you want to pause the video, add this to your notes. Yep, just a good graphic to keep referring back to. And now we have some practice problems. So the first one is myosin heads are in their high energy state, active sites are exposed, and the ATP is hydrolyzed into ADP and phosphate. Which phase is before the phase described above? Okay, so first we have to think about what phase is being described here, and then what phase is directly before that. So pause this video, think about it, and then come back to it. Okay, so for this one, the answer is going to be D. The myosin releases from actin. So currently the stage that is being described up here is the recovery stroke. Because the myosin is in its high energy state, the actin is ready to be bound to because the active sites are exposed, and the ATP was just hydrolyzed into ADP and phosphate. That means that the recovery stroke is currently happening. So, what phase is directly before the recovery stroke? That has to be that the myosin releases the actin. Alright, so practice problem number 2. During the contraction phase of the muscle fiber, the myosin heads of the thick filament are currently binding to the active sites of the actin thin filament. To shorten the sarcomere, which of these should happen next? Alright, pause the video, think about it, come back to this. Alright, so the answer here is C, the power stroke. So what is currently happening right now is the cross-bridge phase. So the myosin heads are bound to the active sites of the actin thin filament, or binding to them. So that means the cross-bridge has formed, is forming. So that is good to know. And then the next step, this is asking should happen next. The next step should be the power stroke. So another thing to keep in mind is to shorten the sarcomere. That is a huge key phrase. So the whole point of the power stroke is to shorten that sarcomere. And essentially the whole idea of a muscle contraction is the power stroke, because the power stroke is what is shortening the sarcomere. Shortening the sarcomere is also a muscle contraction, and that is really the whole goal of this entire process. Alright, so good luck studying, everybody. Make sure to keep referring back to this video if you have any questions, as well as always keep referring back to your notes. And as always, if you have any questions, refer to your professors, refer to your PLAs, your peers. If you have any questions, just email me or any other PLAs, and you guys got this. Good luck studying.